Hey everybody, so this is the third video I'm making on how to make this bowl, and as you can see from that picture, this picture, and the next one, I have learned how to get a consistent shape, and I'll show you how I do that. This is the shape I used to get. I wasn't happy with them. That was sort of okay. Not happy with that. Definitely not happy with that one. This is okay. This one's pretty good. And this one I really liked, but it was a touch and go. But now I can get them to look like this all the time, and I'm going to show you how. So here we have the plate that everybody asks me, where do you get this plate? And it's just a dollar store meat platter. That little blue dot that you see on it, a little blue square, I'll explain that later. It's a piece of tape that I put directly on the plate. And then over the plate is a layer of cling wrap that I buy at Costco in the big box. And you can see it's extended off the plate on either side about 6 inches. And that's so I can pick it up. Now these cups that I'm laying out, that last one I showed you there is a measuring cup that I get on Amazon. The rest of the cups I get at the dollar store. So now these are the crystals that I'm going to mix up in a plain cup without any markings on it. These ones here are little acrylic diamonds that I get at the dollar store. And I just put in about 2 of those handfuls. So I'll show you about how far up the cup it comes. So yeah, just not even a quarter of the way up the cup, maybe a sixth of the way up the cup. And then I usually put in these crystals from, let me go with this first. Okay, so this is recycled glass that I get from Toronto. It's extremely expensive. The order I get fills that box, and it's almost $100. So I'm putting in a little extra of all these 2 crystals because the third crystal I usually use I was out of. And I'll show you a picture of it here. It's from New Classic Resin. And they're these little iridescent chunks of ice. They look like little chunks of ice. I love them so much, but I was out of them. I have them now, but I was out of them. So yeah, I put in about the same amount of those. And then these are vase fillers, again from the dollar store. They're little plastic chips. They're not sparkly. They just end up looking like bubbles when I'm finished with them on the piece. So 2 small scoops of those, and the cup is about 3/4 full. So that's what you want to get, 1/2 to 3/4 full on your cup. Now the resin I'm going to use is from New Classic Resin, and it's called their Quick Cure Resin. And as you can see the black writing on the plate there, I used to write down right on the plate how long the resin took to cure for certain bowls so I wouldn't forget. And this bowl was 4 hours with regular resin, but now we've cut that literally into a quarter with this great quick cure resin from New Classic that I use. And yes, I always wear rubber gloves. I get nagged at in the comments about not having rubber gloves on before. Well, that was the beginning of the pandemic when rubber gloves were hard to get, and I ran out. But yes, I wear rubber gloves all the time. So now I'm measuring out what will be 5 cups in total. So 2.5 cups of hardener and then 2.5 cups of the resin. You always pour the hardener in first, even though it's usually part B, you pour that in first. And then this is the resin. And I'm going to put 2.5 cups of that. This is a 1-to-1 mix. And I'm not going to speed this up. And for those of you that say in the comments, too much talking, yes, I talk a lot. I'm explaining how I do this. If you don't like the talking, there's a mute button. Learn to use it. Okay, so I'm going to mix this resin up. It is a 5-minute stir. I use just the large popsicle stick from the dollar store to stir this up. Now, it's a little colder today, the day I was making this, and so the resin is a little on the thick side. The colder the weather, the thicker your resin's going to be and the more bubbles that you will get in it. The bubbles can be problematic if you're trying to make coasters or something else, but in our case here, it's not a problem. So I cut out the 5 minutes stirring time. We don't want to sit and watch that. Now I'm putting the resin into shot glasses that I buy at the dollar store. They're little plastic, I think they're, I don't know, 1 or 2 ounce shot glasses, and I fill them about 3/4 of the way full. And after I pour my 4 shot glasses 3/4 of the way full, I just put about a teaspoon or so into a Dixie cup, and then I pour the rest onto the crystals. I don't stir it in, and the reason I don't stir it in is because I want the resin to sit on top and kind of start to set up. The more resin that is together, like in a cup, it will cure quicker. And so sometimes I just leave it in the cup and then pour it onto the crystals when I need to start mixing them, but I forgot to do that today. I just poured them right on. So I'm just going to let it sit there and kind of set up. Okay, so the colors that I'm using today, this is teal. I used to use 4 colors and I numbered the bottles 1, 2, 3, 4, but colors 1 and 2, teal, and I don't remember what the other one was I think teal and aqua were very close together, so I don't use the aqua one anymore. This one is turquoise, and I put 3 drops of each color into the resin. And now this one's just called blue, and they're all Bombay ink from Amazon. You can also get them usually at art stores, but it's just easier for me to order them on Amazon. And now I'm just using a popsicle stick. Oh, wait a minute, let's go back to this. So this is New Classic Resin White pigment paste, and you just put enough on the popsicle stick to coat it, and you don't want too much, and then just stir that into the teaspoon or so of resin that I've put into the Dixie cup, and that's going to be used later on to create the white foamy look for the waves. Stir it in really well. And now using popsicle sticks from the dollar store, I used to just stick it straight into the color and start stirring, but then I would notice that a lot of the color ended up soaked into the popsicle stick. So now, as you can see, I kind of dip the popsicle stick into the clear and get the stick nicely coated just in clear, drizzle a little bit over the ink so it's kind of enveloped in the resin, and then I start stirring. And that way I don't lose any of the color soaking into the stick. So you see, I'll do it again here. Now, I talked about how I do wear gloves all the time. The other thing I get asked all the time is people who are very concerned for my health saying, don't you realize you're not wearing a respirator and resin is very bad for your lungs? Yes, I know all that. I've done a lot of research. I am a grown lady. I can figure this out for myself. I cannot wear a respirator because I am extremely claustrophobic. Anything tight over my nose and mouth, I can't deal with. So I don't wear a respirator. What I have is an air purifier running in the room all the time. And if the weather is not raining, if it's not high humidity outside, I will also open a window. Okay, so now here I'm laying down the clear resin in the outer edge. And the reason now that I do a clear outer edge is because I want the crystals to go down in clear resin. I want the crystals to stay pretty clear so that it looks like where the water is petering out, it becomes clearer, and that's your foamy edge. Now I'm putting down the teal. There's no special thing about waving it around like that. I just do it because it sort of helps spread it a little bit into the other color, but it's, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Now I'm just scraping it out, and then I'm going to use that same stick to scrape out the rest of the white because I don't want to dirty a popsicle stick just for scraping out the clear resin. So I wait until I've scraped out the teal and then use that same stick to scrape out what's left of the clear. Now we're putting down the turquoise. I also get people telling me that when I play music, it's very distracting, so I'm not going to play music over this. Now it's the blue. I'm just going to spread it out so that it fills the center. And resin will move to wherever more resin is. So when I cross it back and forth like this, it helps close those gaps, because those little bridges of resin across the white will pull the rest of the resin in towards that. And then wherever it didn't flow, I'll just use the popsicle stick to spread it out and just get it into covering all those little white dots. All right, now I'm going to stir that resin into the beads, and you can see that it's thickened up a little bit already, so that's good. That's what I want, because the beads, the crystals around the edge were tending to set up a lot after the center that I just poured had set up, which led to, when I was shaping it over the bowl, the crystals would fall off. So to try to help them cure kind of at the same time, pouring the resin on top and letting it sit there without stirring it in really helps. And then just using a plastic spoon, I find this the easiest way from the dollar store. And then the popsicle stick to scrape them off the spoon. I just go about now laying this all around the edge, and I kind of pat them a little bit on the flat side. I don't really do it here, but I've started doing that actually just in the last day or two, which has also kind of helped smooshing it into the clear resin around the edge, just to put more resin into the crystals so that they set up faster. I think yesterday I made my 98th bowl, so I'm almost at 100 bowls that I've made. And actually I've made more than 100, because that's just since I started numbering them. I had people start to ask me if I would sign and number my bowls. And so I've started doing that. I started doing that a couple of months into making them. And so my first 15 bowls or so were not signed or numbered. So I've actually made more than 100 bowls, but I would say this Caribbean wave bowl here I've made about 100 of these bowls and sold them. And for those of you, I also get people asking me if I sell them. Yes, I do. You can go to my Etsy page, which is Sandy Beach Bum. It has the same aqua seashell logo as you see here, and you can find it listed on there. And I ship to continental USA and Canada for a price that you will see on that listing. Anywhere else in the world, you need to contact me, and then we'll talk about shipping. And I'll tell you right now, it is insanely expensive. Shipping in Canada is not cheap, or shipping from Canada. It's actually cheaper for me to ship to the lower 48 states than it is for me to ship within Canada. It's crazy. So just laying these crystals all around the edge. Now, I referred to that little piece of blue tape that you see. And if you notice, it's a little off center. So to the left, there is more plate than there is to the right. And so when I put this bowl down on the mold, it will be asymmetrical. One side will be higher than the other. So that dot becomes the center point in the bottom. Therefore, on the left of the bowl, I put a few more crystals because that's the bigger edge of the wave, so I want a few more crystals there. So I just added more to that. Once I get them all the way around, then I put the excess in bald spots, but I also pile quite a few into that side that's, got more, it's more off center. In this case, the left side. And I dropped a crystal in there, so I'm just picking it out with a pair of little jewelry pliers. Now I'm putting the white down for the waves. And waves usually come in a set of 3. So I usually do 3 revolutions around this, 3 circles. I did more today because it was coming out quite thin, but I usually just do 3. And then I get the heat gun, and I'm on the low setting. I warm up those white bits first, and then I turn it to the higher setting and then blow them out. So here I'm just warming them up so that they'll move easier. And then I'll turn it up and blow them out. And when I'm happy with how they look, I stop blowing it. Now I take some alcohol and spray, and that just gets rid of any bubbles and also gives some lacing to the white. It just gives them that sort of foamy look to the white. Now I'm taking some, Some iridescent crystals that are very, very tiny, and sprinkling them onto the crystals that have laid down, and then a little bit into that wave section, and it just looks like sparkle on the water. I get these at Amazon. They're quite expensive, so I'm very careful with how many I use. And now we're going to let this sit.
Later.
Okay, so now we're going to test the resin and see how it's setting up. And the way I do that is I take one of these picks from the dollar store, and right where that piece of tape is, I'm going to lay a brass disc. So I want to just use that area, and I pull up some resin and see how it performs. What I want it to do is stay up in a peak. So we're going to watch this and see how it sinks back down. So it's not quite ready.
11 minutes later.
Okay, so now we're going to try again. We're going to pull the resin up. And now you can see that it stays up in a peak. It's not sinking all the way back down. So I'm going to take one of the brass discs, which I get engraved with my signature by a local guy, and he also puts a number on it. And I'm going to lay it right over that blue piece of tape. And that's why I put that tape there, so I know exactly where this will go. And I tap it so that it's recessed a little bit into the resin. Not too hard because I don't want it to go all the way to the bottom. And here I'm just pushing the crystals around a little bit so that you can see that they're not set up enough yet to mold. They would all fall off.
Later.
So now the amount of time that has elapsed depends on the weather, how hot or cold it is in the room or outside. So at this point, it's been close to 30 minutes later, and now the resin has set up enough that it's still malleable, but the crystals aren't all going to drop. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a little black dot drawn on the saran wrap that I have over this vase that I purchased, and that little black dot is where I want to place the brass disc on top of, and that centers my bowl properly. Now, I'm just straightening out. I pull the saran wrap, and I didn't get it quite in the middle. I noticed, so I'm lifting it up and just adjusting it a little here. And then I pull the saran wrap down pretty tight, and that way I can shape the bowl tightly to the mold. And the mold in this case is a vase that I purchased at HomeSense here in Canada. And I was looking for weeks and weeks, maybe even months, for a bowl or a vase or something that had the shape that I could use, that I could get the bowls that I make to be the perfect finished shape. And this has worked amazing. I only wished I had bought 2 or 3 of them so that I could make more than one bowl at a time. It was a very cheap vase. It was like $12.99. And I think they had 2 or 3 at the time. And I didn't buy them all because I didn't know it was going to work until I tried it. And then when I went back to get more, they were gone, unfortunately. So that means I can only make one bowl at a time. So I've stretched it all out here. And now we're just going to take some UV curing resin, which you'll see in a moment. I'm just tapping the crystals right now into place, just making sure that none of them are falling down. Now this is New Classic UV cured resin, and I'm going to put some over that brass disc so that the brass doesn't tarnish, and it also just levels that little dip that where I pushed it in and makes the bottom of the bowl perfectly level. So I just poured it in there, and then I'm going to take a stick and push it to the edge. Just making sure any bubbles are popped. Just the odd bubble there. You'll just pull them to the edge and then they burst. And then it'll be about 2.5 minutes under a UV light, also purchased at New Classic Resin. And then that little disc will be, the resin over that disc will be rock hard. All right, so it's done. And just tapping it with my nail, I can tell that it is set up nice and hard, so that's good. And then I'm just going to take the flat edge of this skewer and just go around and check for any crystals that are falling off. So I do want the crystals to move and the resin to drip a little to give a watery flowing edge to this bowl. But there are crystals that fall off or are starting to fall completely off. And so those I tap back into place. And you can see here, I'm picking at one that has fallen completely off and popping it back up onto the bowl. So that's where the turntable really helps, is I just turn the bowl around and check for any crystals that look like they're going to completely fall off the bowl. And I'm also just checking that it is setting up so that I know I can walk away and leave it without coming back and finding half the crystals on the table. And this one's doing great. So we're going to leave it now till the resin has cured.
24 hours later.
All right, so it's the next day, obviously, and I'm going to take the bowl off of the mold. And it is a little tricky to get it off. You just have to gently work at it until it pops off. As you can see in a minute, I'm going to be working the edge to get it loose. So I just get my nails, this is where nails are handy. I just get my nails under the edge and just kind of work my way around, wiggling it a little bit. And then I can start to hear the saran wrap separating from the other saran wrap, and then it'll just pop off. There we go. And just so you can see what this vase looks like, I'm just going to let you have a look at it here, in case you can find one at your version of HomeSense. I think you have Home Goods in the States. All right, so now I remember in my first video talking about how difficult it was to get the saran wrap off of the bowl. And what I've realized is I was using a much slower curing resin back then, and the bowl was still pliable when I would take the saran wrap off, and therefore it didn't come away easily. But now with this quick cure resin, this bowl is already rock solid hard, and the saran wrap just peels right off without any issues whatsoever. You can see it's just coming right off. So that's a much better solution than trying to find some other kind of plastic, because I really love the look this saran wrap gives to the inside of the bowl, the way it wrinkles. It just gives it a really cool look. So I'm not willing to give up the saran wrap. So here you can see the finished bowl. Just checking it over, love the way it looks. And what you're not seeing is I do take those pliers again that I used to pull that crystal out of the middle of the bowl when I poured it, to pull any drippy pieces off and any saran wrap that is stuck on the inside into little cracks. I just use those to pull it out. All right, and here's the finished bowl. Again, perfect. I love it. So thanks for watching, and for those of you who asked me to do an updated version of how I make this bowl, I hope you found the video and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Until next time.